Hey, everybody. This is Cam, and I want to welcome you again to the Everyday Arborist podcast. This is episode 7. As I'm recording this, it is Memorial Day. And before we get started, I wanted to honor all those who served our country and gave the ultimate sacrifice, laying down their lives for all those missing in action and prisoners of war and those who lost their lives throughout all the wars that we've had. We honor and remember them today. And if you had family or know of anyone who served in the military, we thank them and honor them today. So today's episode is going to be on the Southern Magnolia, Magnolia grandiflora. So as many of you know, listening to this podcast, we're huge fans of oaks here, but this is probably the tiebreaker or the second favorite tree of mine. If you have been anywhere in the country, you have had to have seen a southern magnolia. It's the quintessential southern tree, and I like to call it the queen of the South. So I want you to, wherever you are, imagine yourself sitting on the front porch in a old southern home in Mississippi, and you're in a front porch swing. You have a sweet iced tea with a lemon, of course. You're relaxing on a nice weekend, and you have the smell of sweet magnolia blooms in the air. And you look out and see a huge magnolia tree. What a special tree the southern magnolia is. And I'm sure many of you, like myself, have incredible memories, whether it be weddings, graduations, climbing them, or playing with the cones, whatever it is. I think every person listening or who's experienced the southern magnolia is marked how great of a tree it is. And the southern magnolia, for me, it kind of indicates the start of summertime. So those blooms for the southern magnolia are going to come out around that April time period. So not yet summer, but really starts heating up. The days get longer, and those blooms start filling those magnolia trees and filling the air with their fragrance. And that really feels like, to me, the kickoff of summer. And it definitely is doing that now here in Nashville. The southern magnolia, it's the state flower for not only Mississippi, but Louisiana as well. It's pretty impressive. You get 2 states there that choose you as their state flower. And it is the state tree of Mississippi. They are all over the place down there. And even in all the other southern states around there, they are really common within 200 miles of that coastal area down there. The southern magnolia is native from Maryland, south to Florida, and west all the way to Texas. And its cold hardy cultivars can be grown as far as north as southern Ohio, northern New Jersey, and Long Island. And that is from the USDA website regarding their hardiness. But that's a huge area that it's from. Super cool. It is in the Magnoliaceae family, which is one of the oldest tree families in existence. And the magnolia flower is the oldest known flowering plant. It's called a primitive flower. The USDA says that its hardiness zones are between 6 and 10. You can commonly find this southern magnolia in landscapes all across the South, into the Midwest, up north, and you can find it in forests in the deep South. Like I said, in those coastal areas, maybe you're going to the beach or visiting relatives that live down there. You can look all throughout those pine woods and forests and see southern magnolias, even in the understory or even in open environments, thriving when they have the chance. Some cultivars you can find in planter beds, at restaurants or on back porches, and then even in espalier gardens that you can find them. So as far as the southern magnolia in general, it can grow and reach up to 50 to 80 feet at maturity, with some reaching even much higher than that in special circumstances. Its morphology is similar to like a pyramidal shape. Its mid and lower sections can reach a diameter of 30 to 40 feet, and it tapers upward to a pointed and more rounded crown. So you guys have probably seen them all over as arborists in the region that you're in, but here in the South, they're staples in the front yard and grow wide open in the lawn. And some people like leave them untouched, so there's no raising, and it's almost like a large pyramid or a gown almost on a dress, hence the Queen of the South terminology. But also you see them as corner pieces or lining forest environments. So really can grow anywhere, and its height and width definitely vary based upon its environment. But the largest southern magnolia is located in Smith County, Mississippi, and it measures more than 122 feet tall with a DBH greater than 6 feet. That is super impressive. And to my knowledge, that's still standing today and might be the new champion. And the former national championship Southern Magnolia was in Mississippi, and that once towered over the DeSoto National Forest. It failed during a hurricane and was repurposed and carved into a statue of Smokey Bear. The tree was estimated to be 250 years old, and it was recognized in September of 2020 as the national champion Southern Magnolia, and it stood at 111 feet and with a diameter of 67 inches. That is a huge trunk. Huge. And 111 feet is pretty impressive for a Southern Magnolia. Now, that article was on the U.S. Forest Service website, and they even had a picture of the magnolia trunk that was carved into Smokey Bear, which is really cool. And shout out to Smokey here on the hat. But as far as failures go, if you were to build a species profile, similar to the terminology they use for tree risk assessment, I don't often see Southern magnolias failing consistently in wind events. It seems like it's either smaller branches due to the weight of the flowers and leaves and cones in straight line wind events. So you have, 1 to maybe 2 inch diameter branches on the ends breaking off, or you have larger failures at, say, codominant stems, weak areas of decayed hollows, things of that nature. But really a very sturdy tree. And I would venture to say that those leaves, when receiving a wind load, help dampen it, as studies have shown. Now, another historical tree, the White House on the south portico, had a southern magnolia called the Jackson magnolia. And that was planted by Andrew Jackson, likely grown here in Nashville, even just a mile or two down the road from my house at the Hermitage, where his home was here. And that was planted in 1835. And it was taken down this year on April 7th. This is from a White House official article from whitehouse.gov. You can find it there. And so it was taken down on April 7th based upon the results of a tree risk assessment done. It seemed to be really well done, and the way the White House reported on it in the article seems very thorough, and basically reached a point where it was no longer safe to be on the White House grounds based upon that risk assessment. But a really cool thing about this is that it was replaced by a direct descendant of that tree that is a 12-year-old sapling grown by the National Park Service and was prepared for removal of the original Jackson tree. So really cool that the National Park Service had a part in that and was able to replace that tree with another descendant of that specific southern magnolia. And the Jackson magnolia, believe it or not, was actually the southern magnolia that was featured on the back of the $20 bill from 1928 to 1998. So probably not in rotation anymore in anyone's wallets, but it's really cool to think that a southern magnolia made it to that place of prominence or onto the $20 bill where everyone could see its awesomeness, I guess you could say. So that's a little backstory, a little bit about its shape, size, and some history that's pretty cool. Now we'll get into some of the characteristics. I've got a southern magnolia grouping of leaves and a flower from our neighborhood that I grabbed. And let's start first with the leaves. We got a leathery green dark leaf. It's got that waxy, shiny texture, but water really beads right off of it. And then on the back, depending on what variety you have, you can find it more rust orange color. This is a brighter orange color, especially when the sun hits it. But it's more of like a furry fuzz texture. but these are some newer leaves, so they're a bit brighter green. Let's see, I've got the darker green one on this bunch right here. You kind of see there, nice pointed lobe, and the back being that rust brown color. So like I said, it varies what it's going to be between different varieties, but those leaves are really cool and are a really nice accent when it's used in the landscape. It even sticks out in the forest when you see it. In those pine forests, you can see in the understory, those dark green glossy leaves stick out, and they are beautiful. The bark is super low key. It's relatively smooth on younger trees, and it's moderately cracked and furrowed on your more mature trees. It's like a gray to light brown, and it's between a 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch thick. So the real star of the show with magnolias, as you may have predicted, is the flower. So it's an incredible flower in basically all of its aspects. This one's not quite fully pushed out, but it's a cream white flower that is extremely fragrant. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, you could almost close your eyes and imagine that smell anywhere you are in the world. Kind of like a lemon, like vanilla-esque. I mean, there's so many notes you could have on it, but for some, I mean, it could even remind you of your childhood or a special memory. But what an amazing flower. They are cup-shaped, and they can have up to 12 petals and be up to 8 inches in diameter. The flower that is on the cover of this podcast was definitely bigger than the size of my head and almost like a dinner plate. I would argue between 8 to 10 inches in diameter. So a really incredible flower. And they begin to bloom in April, like I mentioned, and they continue blooming all the way until late summer. So super impressive, that timeline all throughout the summer. And many call it the perfect flower. And it's not the only one that's notated this, but the reason they say it's the perfect flower is because it has both male and female parts. And so what I mean by that, see if the camera can get it here at all. But basically, we have the carpel that is up top at this, what will be the future cone in the flower. That is what functions as the female part, and the stigmas that will receive the pollen, and the stamens here at the bottom, which are the like needle-like parts, are the male function, and those will what will fall out. Like if you were to shake this flower, even now, it kind of shakes those stamens off, and they land on the flower petal, and then they toss in the wind, and the pollen goes everywhere. Now, it is a perfect flower because it has the male and female parts, but for pollination-wise, that would be bad for a plant, for it to self-pollinate, because it wouldn't get any new genetics. But the workaround with that is that the southern magnolia flower, since it's one of the oldest known flowering plants and a primitive flower, is that it has adapted or evolved, however you view that, to turn on and off those male and female parts at different times to where they don't often or hardly ever collide. And so that would help prevent that self-pollination. And so the flower knows when to release and open back up in that point for those stigmas on the carpel to receive the pollen from the stamens. So that is super cool there. Another cool thing about pollination when we're talking about that is that the southern magnolia flower is not pollinated by bees, because bees are predated by the southern magnolia. And so the actual pollinator of southern magnolia flowers are beetles and male mosquitoes, actually. Not female mosquitoes, because those are the ones that we are frequently bit by. But beetles and male mosquitoes are the ones that pollinate these the most. And the southern magnolia, with these stamens at the bottom, do a really good job spreading that stamen out all along the flowers and throughout the ground to really help that pollination process. So, like I said, not only is it the perfect flower, but it's also called a primitive flower due to its petal arrangement. once these petals fall off, you'll see the petal scars where they separated. And it goes in almost like a spiral pattern, almost looks random where they were connected. But they are a primitive flower because they can form 3 to 4 whorls versus a common point where they meet together, if that makes sense. Kind of complicated, but nonetheless, the perfect flower, primitive flower, and basically the most incredible smell you could think of. So anyways, that is the flower of the southern magnolia wrapped up in a bunch of what I could mention. And before I go too far beyond that, I'll mention the sepal, I think it's pronounced, is what covers the petals while they're in bud. And so you'll see this mid to late spring. And this is what is going to cover that while it's in bud. And then you see it's breaking right there. And those petals are going to pop open, being pushed by the carpels and the stigmas that will open that flower petal up. And they'll spread out and form or start that process of pollination. So very cool process that the magnolia undergoes all the way up into summertime and right before fall. Now, as we mentioned fall, we'll get into another iconic part of that tree, and that is the cone. Now, I don't have a cone with me right now, but that inside of this flower will eventually become that, whether it be the scars from the flower petals to the stamens, and then the stigmas up here will all morph and grow into what is the iconic fruit of the southern magnolia, which that September, October time frame, you'll find southern magnolias covered in those large brown cones that have the red berries on them, that have a wax gelatin-like cover on those seeds. They're formed in a spiral aggregate pattern similar to kind of like a strawberry and similar shape of a pine cone. When I was a kid, I would honestly use them as hand grenades. They were fun to throw around and not too heavy, so it wouldn't hurt when you got hit by them. But growing up in Northwest Georgia, you definitely find things to play with in the woods, and that was a really fun part of the southern magnolia growing up. But that fruit is pretty iconic because in fall and wintertime it adds really good color to the landscape, but also used in decorations and for even Christmas decorations. But as far as the fruit goes, while it's in the cone on the tree, it is very beneficial to wildlife and it's attractive to so many birds. I'll list a few that enjoy it. Wild turkeys, cedar waxwings, orioles, cardinals, thrushes, warblers, finches, thrashers, grosbeaks, jays, sparrows, vireos, hummingbirds, quail, woodpeckers, and wrens. Almost ran out of breath there because that is a super long list, but really cool that a cone on one tree can attract so many birds and be beneficial to not only your landscape, but to wildlife. Now, an experience that I had with the cones was that in Kansas City, I had a Bracken's Brown Beauty cultivar, Southern Magnolia, and I took that cone one fall, and after watching a YouTube video that I researched, I had a attempt at overwintering some of those red seeds and having them germinate into little magnolia saplings. Now, what I did is I took the cones and with the red seeds, I pulled them out of the cone before birds got to them. And I soaked those seeds in warm water for about an hour or two inside of a bowl. And after that hour goes by, I waited to see what seeds would float to the top and what stayed at the bottom. The ones that came to the top were notating that they were bad seeds because they either had air or were compromised by an insect or maybe a weevil. And those I threw out. And the rest of the seeds that were at the bottom, I drained the water out and let them lightly dry on a paper towel. And after some time went by, you can take your thumb and index finger and try to gently work the wax gel like texture off of that seed, because the seed is protected by that red cover, but that's not the seed itself. It is inside that red covering. Now, once you have that open, you can then place all of those seeds that you've collected. I like to count them just so obviously I know how many I have. But take a Ziploc bag and label it on the date and fill that Ziploc bag with a sandy like soil. You could probably do a mixture of a couple things. I think mine was sand and the local soil I had at my house. And you're going to take that, seal it up, and I think you could put a little bit of water in there to keep it moist, but then seal it and put it in the back of your fridge just so it's out of the way of the food that you actually eat. And that is going to be in that September, October timeframe when the seeds are red and can be pulled out easily from that cone. And you are going to overwinter those in the fridge. And I forgot the name of that process. I just tried to look it up, but I'm blanking on it. But it's basically you're tricking that seed inside the Ziploc bag that it's overwintering, and it'll form fine root hairs and fibers outside that seed to kind of root in as if it was underground in the wintertime. So that will happen all through the wintertime inside the fridge. And then that March to April time frame, you can take that seed out and lay them out on a paper towel. Be very gentle because those hairs can be very tender and easily break off. But kind of lay them out on a paper towel or the table. And then individually, you could place those seeds in a similar pod or soil area to where you would start like garden seeds for vegetables and such. But that's what I did. And I had really good success. Probably 30 or so of those seeds had turned into baby saplings. And I brought them to work. And unfortunately, I was super lazy and placed them in the windowsill. And they got a little too hot and not enough water in that scenario. So too hot, not enough water, and they all didn't make it. But the test and the experiment, I think, was a success because they grew, which is super cool. But it's definitely worth a try if you have the time to do that this fall and have some space in the very back of your fridge. Doesn't really take up a lot, and you'll probably forget about it unless you set a reminder. But anyways, that was really fun. So we've covered the leaves, the bark, the flowers, and the fruit. What an incredible tree we have learned about on this episode. I'm sure many of you have awesome memories of southern magnolias that you've experienced. I know I've climbed some at my wife's college was in Rome, Georgia. It's called Berry College, and they had a lot of beautiful ones right on the campus that you could almost just walk into from the ground. I didn't mention this earlier, but some of the southern magnolias, the older ones, have those low, large limbs that could be up to 10 to 12, 14 inches in diameter that are crawling all the way down to the lawn. And you could almost walk right up into the canopy. And it feels like a jungle inside because those dark, glossy leaves have covered all of the sunlight from breaking in. And it feels like, Pocahontas, a whole new world. But yeah, it's really, really cool inside those trees. And I've climbed a few here in Nashville for work, for pruning on end reduction. And I think we've done some dynamic cabling in them. But man, what a special tree. Even when we go on vacation, you can see them in Florida, like I mentioned, in the pine forests along the road. And even when you go to the beach, up against the side of beach houses, and they look really cool in their accent with all the different colors of those homes. And they are lining the driveways. And where I grew up in Georgia and often here in Tennessee, they can be seen all over the place. You can find them as street trees in Portland. I think that they are found even in California in the landscape and in different garden beds and restaurant areas, probably more in that espalier form out there. But I know many of you are probably whatever you're doing now are thinking of that one or two specific magnolia trees that have stuck out to you or you have memories with. So, what a cool tree. And to end it, I would like to cover just a few magnolia cultivars that I'm fond of, or at least are popular. So we'll cover a few here. The first cultivar is going to be your Bracken's Brown Beauty. And this is prized for its dense, compact growth and cold hardiness. Bracken's Brown Beauty is a very popular variety. It will mature to a height of 30 to 40 feet with a 15 to 20 foot spread, and the leaves are brilliant green on the upper surface and a rusty brown on the underside. So I would say that this looks a lot like that Bracken's Brown, and could be a different one, but this looks very similar to one. Then you have the D.D. Blanchard, which boasts beautiful dark green leaves with bright orange-brown undersides, and it's a hardy classic beauty that matures to 30 to 40 feet and 15 to 20 feet wide. And I would say when you see the D.D. Blanchard amongst other southern magnolias, you really notice it because that leaf is almost like a black mixed with the green, obviously, but it is really beautiful, and the stark contrast of the bright orange rust color underneath really makes it super cool. You have the Edith Bogue, and that's possibly the most cold hardy of all southern magnolias. The Edith Bogue features creamy white flowers, of course, and light green leaves. Grows to a height of about 30 feet and a width of 15 feet. The Little Gem, often see that all throughout the South. It's an excellent choice where space is limited and for espalier training. The Little Gem grows to 20 feet tall and 12 feet wide. The leaves and flowers are a bit smaller than other varieties, but they're prolific and fragrant. The sweet-smelling flowers continue to open up throughout the summer months. Now, the Little Gem you often see in front yards. I think big box stores sell them frequently, but you can see them as good corner pieces to homes. So that's a very good option. One of my favorites is the Teddy Bear. And the Teddy Bear is a very compact, upright version that makes a great small specimen or accent in the landscape. I've planted one at my parents' house and also for clients in the past who've really enjoyed it. It has large, fragrant flowers that cover the tree, obviously, in the summer months, like the other ones, and the reddish-brown felt on the bottom. And the leaves are a deep green, very similar to this, but something unique to the teddy bear is that you see here the pointed lobe of this southern magnolia leaf is the teddy bear actually does more of a rounded curve. And so it has a much softer appearance of that leaf, which maybe is why it earned the name teddy bear. But really cool variety the teddy bear is. I definitely would recommend it to you as an arborist. If you have a house, a yard that has the space for a small compact tree and you are in this southern hardiness zone, it's definitely worth checking out. It looks really cool. These two I don't have experience with, but there is the K Paris. It fits somewhere size-wise between a Little Gem and a Bracken's Brown Beauty size-wise. And then you have Claudia Wanamaker. And it has medium-sized leaves and blooms May through June. And the Claudia Wanamaker can reach a mature height of 50 to 60 feet. So those are some common cultivars. And you've probably heard of most of them, but I just wanted to mention them just in case you guys are curious or even considering planting one at your house or even for your clients. But once again, man, what a great tree the Southern Magnolia is. And it's the queen of the South, the quintessential Southern tree. And even companies like Joanna Gaines, they're naming entire companies after these trees because it's such a statement and a hallmark in people's memories and their lives. These Southern Magnolias are. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. A little bit different than our normal interviews, but these trees are something I'm super passionate about and have a ton of childhood and adult memories with, and just a great tree. So whatever your experience is with the southern magnolia, I hope you walk away with a greater appreciation. And even throughout your day, whatever kind of day you're having, you can just imagine, you can close your eyes and think of that amazing fragrance, the beautiful canopy, that dark green leaf. And hopefully you learn something new with this episode and share it with those around you. And I appreciate everyone who's been on this journey all the way to a whopping episode 7. So I've loved your feedback and those who have shared the episode. I super appreciate that. And once again, today is Memorial Day. I want to honor and remember all those who gave the ultimate sacrifice for our country, laid their lives down, and for all those missing in action or prisoners of war, we honor and remember you. And like always, thank you guys for listening to this week's episode of the Everyday Arborist podcast. You can find it on Spotify and YouTube. And you guys have a great rest of your week. Thank you.